I'm going to rush you, and I'm going to start question 3. So I find my question paper again. Charity fundraising, boring and embarrassing unless you join in, says comic Robert Webb. How does Robert Webb present his views about charity fundraising? Okay, so I'm going to have views with a circle around it. I'm going to circle charity fundraising, that's what I'm looking at, in a light-hearted but thought-provoking way. Thanks. So I'm going to put a circle around light-hearted and another one around thought-provoking, which is annoying because it goes on to the next line, but that's life. So I've got 4 things to look at. The 2 most important bits, though, are the light-hearted and thought-provoking. And so I'm just going to find that article and put light-hearted, and then I'm going to put thought-provoking there as well. And that's just to remind me to write about those things. Okay. Once again, I'm not going to read the whole article first. I'm going to stop reading as soon as I've found something that's light-hearted or thought-provoking. I'll just double-check that that's what I'm looking for. Brilliant. And it tells me the name of the author, Robert Webb, so I'll mention his name as I'm writing. Okay. The build-up to comic release, mammoth annual fundraiser, Red Nose Day, can feel like the build-up to a general election. One thing they both have in common is that they've taken over our TV viewing. As an added extra, they both provide the chance for seeing public figures getting a bucket of baked beans tipped over their heads. Wow, there's loads I could write about this, okay. So the first thing he does is he has a humorous contrast, because I've got to talk about it being light-hearted. There's a humorous contrast between the charity appeal and a general election, where general elections we normally expect to be boring, whereas the charity appeal we expect to be entertaining. Right, I'll write about that contrast. Clap when you're done.
Do we need to quote?
Let's go back to the question. Do I need to quote? You have pointed out a weakness in what I just did. I have to look at the next part of the question. In your answer, you should refer closely to the language and the tone. Oh dear, I forgot to put a circle round language and a circle round tone. Luckily, Phoebe was here to point out my stupidity. Brilliant. So now that I've highlighted the word language, do I need to quote? Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to quote. Ella, I haven't picked any in ages, but your homework was awesome, so I'm confident about this. Go for it. That's all right. Just read me what you wrote on that first bit.
Robert Webb uses a humorous contrast between charity appeal and general election, as the election is typically boring. I just quoted, they can feel like the build-up to a general election.
Result. Well done. Okay, the next bit I noticed in that bit, public figures getting a bucket of baked beans tipped over their heads. So he adds to the humour with deliberate use of comic alliteration. Bucket of baked beans tipped over their heads. Right, I'll write that down. Right, I'm going to cheat a bit here. In the exam, you'd keep doing what I'm doing, finding a bit more that's humorous, it's got a light-hearted tone, quoting a bit. But we haven't started at the beginning of the hour, so we don't get the full hour here. So I'm going back to my question, and I've dealt with how the fundraising is light-hearted, but I haven't dealt with anything about thought-provoking. Now I know from reading many articles where the thought-provoking part of the article is likely to be. What do you reckon?
Middle of the end.
Yeah, it's going to be more towards the end, isn't it? There might be some in the middle, but I know I'm going to find something thought-provoking towards the end, so I'm going to go to the final paragraphs. So I'm going to go to this bit here. There are other objections. There are other objections people raise that are less personal and more political. Charity lets governments off the hook. They ought to look after the poor. This has always struck me as feeble. Shall I not help a struggling mum carry a buggy up the stairs in order to send London Underground a powerful message that they should install a lift? Okay, so in order to be thought-provoking, He's ridiculing views that disagrees with him. What a fast approach technique is that? Creating an enemy. Okay, so he uses a rhetorical question in order to create an enemy of people who disagree with him. And then I'm going to quote from that paragraph. When you've written about the rhetorical question and creating an enemy, please clap. Got time to hear yours, Dan, while people are writing?
But he used a rhetorical question to create an enemy of those who oppose his views, and then used the quote, "Should I not, helpless, struggling mum, carry a buggy up the stairs in order to send London Underground a powerful message that they should be schooled it?"
Well done. And I think I wrote on your last homework, don't start your points with a quotation. And you haven't started your points with a quotation. It's just a clumsier way. If you make your point first, then the reader knows why the quotation is coming. If you just put the quotation there, the reader goes, "What is that there?" I have to read on to find out. It's just a clunkier way of building an argument.
Maybe that's a rhetorical, maybe that's an effective reason for doing it.
Maybe it's a reason for doing it, but it's viewed as ineffective. My apologies for pointing that out. Right, let me sum up here though. Your exam skill is to make sure you've answered each part of that question. In real life you'd have longer for that question. You just keep going and quoting. I'm going to go back to the question. Did I write about how he is thought-provoking in that way? So I'm going to double check now, that last bit that I wrote. I'm going to double check it. Have I mentioned him trying to provoke our thoughts, getting us to think? If I haven't, I'm going to add a sentence that includes that keyword. I can see lots of people still writing. Phoebe nodding at me, so she's going to read me her bit.
Provoking tone towards the end of saying, in order to send London Underground a powerful message that they should install it. Here he uses creating an enemy of the London Underground government and uses a rhetorical question to emphasise his point, creating a small amount of emotion in the reader, like sympathy kind of thing.
Yeah, rather than say a small amount of emotion, you've corrected yourself. Creating sympathy in the reader. Good. Always be as precise as possible. Okay, listening to Phoebe's brings me to that last bit. She's made sure she used the word tone. So that's my final check. In my answer, have I used the word tone to let the examiner know that I've answered the question fully? Double check. If you've used the word tone and you've thought about the thought-provoking, please clap. The rest of you keeping going.
I don't get how you write that tone.
You would just say his tone is humorous, angry, encouraging, colloquial, whatever you think fits. Okay, that is how to do the walking, talking mock. Hopefully you've got 2 full mark answers. The last one won't be full mark. If you've got any questions about the mock, email them to me. I will answer them from Belgium. And I'll put this on YouTube with credits to all the people who I picked on. You see,